Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated at around 2 a.m. on Wednesday. That's according to Iranian media, who also say he was staying at a special residence for war veterans in North Tehran. Hamas called the strike a severe escalation that would not achieve its goals. A senior Hamas official claimed Israel was responsible, though Israel gave no immediate comment. Iran's Revolutionary Guards confirmed Haniyeh's death in Tehran, only hours after he attended a swearing-in ceremony for the country's new president. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas strongly condemned the killing of the Hamas leader in comments reported by Iran state media. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he was seeking to cool rising tensions in the region.
I don't think war is inevitable. I maintain that. I think there's always room and opportunities for diplomacy, and I'd like to see parties pursue those opportunities.
However, Austin also said the United States would help defend Israel if it were attacked. The news comes less than 24 hours after Israel claimed to have killed the Hezbollah commander it said was behind a deadly strike in the Israel-occupied Golan Heights, complicating chances for a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. Senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuhri told Reuters it is a grave escalation intended to undermine Hamas's resolve, adding that the group are confident of victory. Haniyeh, who is normally based in Qatar, has been the face of Hamas's international diplomacy as the war set off by the Hamas-led attack on Israel on October the 7th has raged in Gaza, where 3 of his sons were killed in an Israeli airstrike. Appointed as Hamas's leader in 2017, he often travelled between Turkey and Qatar for ceasefire talks or to talk to Hamas's ally Iran. The International Criminal Court Prosecutor Office requested an arrest warrant for him over alleged war crimes. At the same time, it issued a similar request against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Demonstrators packed the streets of Caracas on Tuesday, cheering for Venezuela's opposition, who said they had vote tallies to prove that President Nicolas Maduro had lost Sunday's election in a landslide, despite the country's election authority declaring his victory. Opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez waved what appeared to be tally sheets at the crowds, alongside opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who was barred from running in the election but spearheaded the campaign for Gonzalez. They said Gonzalez had more than twice as many votes as Maduro in the presidential election, based on the 90% of vote tallies they've been able to access. With these numbers, we will begin the reconstruction of Venezuela hand in hand with all of you, Gonzalez told the crowd. Venezuela's electoral authority had announced on Monday that the incumbent president had secured a third term with 51% of the vote, saying he'd won the majority of valid votes. But the opposition alleges the electoral body is biased towards the dictatorial government. The US-based Carter Center, which observed the vote, said in a statement late on Tuesday the election, quote, did not meet international standards of electoral integrity and cannot be considered democratic. It added that the electoral authority's failure to publish disaggregated results amounts to a serious breach, outlining what it said was a deeply flawed process from start to finish. Protests have erupted across the country, with voters demanding transparency in the election. At least 11 people have been killed in incidents related to the count or associated protests, according to a local human rights group. As tensions ran high, cameras have captured police hitting and kicking protesters before detaining them. Maduro's government has denounced the protests as an attempted coup. On Tuesday evening, the president ordered military and police patrols across the country. He also called Gonzalez a coward and Machado a terrorist, accusing them of fomenting violence.
An Israeli airstrike on the densely populated southern suburbs of Beirut heightened fears of an escalation of wider conflict in the Middle East. Israel's military said it was targeting a senior Hezbollah commander in what it called a retaliation for a cross-border rocket attack that killed 12 young people. Whether or not it leads to a wider escalation will depend on how Hezbollah chooses to respond, says Rhonda Slim, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute.
This is a highly densely populated area. I expect the casualty rate to increase. The combination of a hit on a civilian site in leading to a civilian casualty rate, that will mean that Hezbollah will respond. The question is how they will respond.
Beirut's southern suburbs are a stronghold of the Iran-backed Lebanese armed group Hezbollah. The Israeli military said the airstrike killed Hezbollah's most senior military commander. Lebanon's health minister told Reuters that the strike also killed another person and injured dozens, some critically. On her way to a campaign stop in Atlanta, Georgia, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke to reporters about the strike.
Israel has a right to defend itself, and I unequivocally support Israel's right to remain secure and to defend the security of Israel. What we know in particular is yes, it has a right to defend itself against a terrorist organization, which is exactly what Hezbollah is. But all of that being said, we still must work on a diplomatic solution to end these attacks, and we will continue to do that work. Thank you all.
Beirut had been on edge for days, anticipating an Israeli reprisal. Days earlier, a rocket strike on the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights on Saturday killed 12 children and teens on a football field. Hezbollah denied involvement in the attack, but said the group fired rockets at a military target in the Golan Heights. The killing of the youths prompted a high-level Western diplomatic flurry to avert a major escalation that could inflame the wider region. The Israeli military said it had issued no new instructions for civil defense in Israel, a possible indication that Israel did not plan further strikes immediately. Lebanon's foreign minister said his government condemned the Israeli strike in Beirut and planned to file a complaint to the United Nations over it. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said he did not believe a fight was inevitable between Hezbollah and Israel, though he remained concerned about the potential for escalation.
Likely Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris held a spirited rally in Atlanta on Tuesday that highlighted the new energy she has brought to November's election against Republican nominee Donald Trump.
So the momentum in this race is shifting. And there are signs that Donald Trump is feeling it.
The vice president took jabs at Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance.
And by the way, don't you find some of their stuff to just be plain weird?
There are less than 100 days to go in one of the least predictable election seasons in recent memory. Since Biden ended his re-election bid just over a week ago, Harris has significantly outperformed him in recent polling among young people, black voters, and Hispanic voters. A Reuters Ipsos poll published on Tuesday showed Harris with a 1-point lead over Trump, down from 2 points a week earlier. She was joined in Atlanta by rappers Quavo and Megan Thee Stallion, who performed before Harris's speech. Harris pledged Democrats would win Georgia, a swing state the party had written off, which could play a decisive role in November. She also taunted Trump for backing out of a debate with her.
I do hope you'll reconsider to meet me on the debate stage. Because as the saying goes, if you've got something to say, say it to my face.
Harris also appeared to embrace some Biden policy priorities, vowing to bring down prices on day one of her presidency. She said she would ban more hidden banking fees, take on corporate landlords, and, quote, cap unfair rent increases. After her speech, Harris appeared on a Zoom call with supporters, telling them, quote, this is a sprint, and asking them to volunteer. Her quickly assembled campaign has raised $200 million since Biden dropped out and signed up 170,000 new volunteers. Sources say Harris will reveal her new vice presidential nominee at a rally on Tuesday in Philadelphia. The location suggests Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro has moved to the top of a short list of running mates.
France's economy grew slightly faster than expected in the second quarter, and the Paris Olympics is expected to bring forecast-beating growth in the third. Official data showed GDP rose 0.3% in Q2, as higher exports offset flat consumer spending. Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said this was owing to economic policies, quote, working and giving tangible results. And he said 2024 growth would likely exceed the outgoing government's 1% forecast. That's especially with the Olympic Games likely to boost activity by 0.3 percentage points in the third quarter. Le Maire said France needed to stay focused on reducing spending. The country currently faces a political impasse after President Emmanuel Macron called a snap parliamentary election in June that produced a hung parliament. A left-wing alliance came first in the vote. It wants to form a government and radically change France's economic course with a new tax and spending drive. Despite the political crisis affecting business morale, the Olympics' effect means France could still see some economic wins.
It's all about AI as results come in from global tech giants. And there are growing signs of a divide between those spending on the technology and those already making money from it. Microsoft earnings disappointed investors on Tuesday. The tech titan warned it would have to spend a lot more money to build out its AI infrastructure, even as growth slowed in its cloud computing business. Over the fourth quarter, capital spending at the firm rose almost 78%, driven almost wholly by AI. The warning on costs sent Microsoft shares down as much as 7% in after-hours trade. One analyst said Wall Street doesn't have patience. It wants to see signs that AI is lifting revenues now. That is not a problem for the world's big chip makers. Tuesday also saw US firm AMD beat expectations and increase its forecast for AI chip sales by $500 million. The company is seen as one of the few potentially viable rivals to Nvidia, which dominates the market. A day later, it was a similar story for South Korean giant Samsung. On Wednesday, it reported a 15-fold jump in profits and forecast robust demand for chips, also driven by AI. The company's semiconductor division reported its best quarter in 2 years, driven by explosive demand for high-end silicon used for chatbots and the like. Chip prices were also lifted by the boom, adding another boost to the bottom line. Samsung shares rose close to 1% in early trades Wednesday following the news.
A large crowd of anti-Muslim protesters clashed with police on Tuesday in the northern English town of Southport, one day after a horrific stabbing during a Taylor Swift yoga and dance workshop. 3 girls were killed and 5 other children were critically injured. Although police say that the attack was not linked to terrorism and the teenage suspect was born in the UK, far-right groups have stoked speculation that the suspect was involved with Islam. Violence erupted when several hundred protesters threw items at a mosque. The crowd also damaged police vehicles by setting them on fire and throwing bricks and garbage containers at them. Merseyside police say 22 officers were injured during the clashes. Police linked the crowd to the English Defence League, a group which has sometimes staged violent demonstrations against Islam. Away from the violence, hundreds attended an emotional vigil to honour the victims killed in the attack. Prime Minister Keir Starmer was there.
I came here to pay my respects to the victims and families who are going through raw pain and grief that most of us can't imagine. I can't imagine as a dad myself.
A 17-year-old male is currently in police custody on suspicion of murder and attempted murder after the bloody rampage. Witnesses described the attack as being like a scene from a horror film. In addition to the 3 deaths, 8 children suffered stab wounds. 5 of them and 2 adults who had tried to protect them remain in a critical condition. Police say the motive remained unclear. Local officials claimed that many involved in the clashes were from outside the area, and the Liverpool Region Mosque Network condemned those attempting to exploit the tragedy for hatred. Fans of Taylor Swift have raised over $320,000 for the victims' families and the hospital treating the injured children. Concerns about rising knife crime in the UK continue to grow, with Starmer vowing to address the issue.
Landslides swept through tea estates in southern India's Kerala state on Tuesday, killing dozens and leaving many missing, authorities said. The hillsides collapsed following torrential rainfall a day before, sending rivers of mud, water and boulders onto homes in the Wayanad district. Most of the victims are tea and cardamom estate workers and their families who were asleep at the time in makeshift tents. Nearly 350 families live in the region and some 250 people had been rescued so far, state officials said. The state's chief minister told Reuters a proper death toll is difficult to establish, as many body parts have been spotted in the river. Here's Excise Minister of Kerala, MB Rajesh.
We fear that the gravity of this tragedy is much more than these numbers. Rescue operations are being carried out on a war footing. Police, NDRF, Fire Force and various agencies are actively involved in rescue operations.
Rajesh said those rescue efforts were hampered due to a collapsed bridge near Churaumala, which links the disaster zone. Army engineers were roped in to help build an alternative bridge, the Chief Minister's office said in a statement. The Weather Office said there was extremely heavy rainfall over north and central Kerala so far on Tuesday, with more rain predicted through the day. It's the worst disaster in Kerala since 2018, when heavy floods killed almost 400 people.
The Bank of Japan surprised markets on Wednesday with a rate hike. Following a policy meeting, the BOJ board raised the overnight call rate to 0.25%, up from 0 to 0.1% previously. The move was largely unexpected and took the rate to its highest since 2008. Speaking at a news conference, Bank Governor Kazuo Ueda said the time was ripe for a move.
In the meeting today, we have judged that it would be appropriate to adjust the degree of easing from the perspective of sustainable, stable achievement of 2% inflation.
The BOJ boss also set out plans to reduce the bank's massive program of bond buying, which had been intended to support the economy. It all marks a swing to tighter monetary policy, in contrast to the move to reduce rates elsewhere in the world. In the US, the Federal Reserve is widely expected to do a cut in September as inflation pressures there ease. Japan's battered yen currency saw volatile trade following Wednesday's news. It rose as much as 0.8% versus the dollar, passing three-month highs before giving up the gains. The Nikkei stock index rallied, with banks among the top performers. They're expected to benefit as higher interest rates boost margins on lending and lift investment income. Shares in megabank Mizuho rose around 5% in afternoon trade.
Procter & Gamble posted a surprise drop in quarterly sales, sending shares down nearly 7% in Tuesday morning trading. Known for household items such as Charmin toilet paper and Pampers diapers, P&G has been increasing promotions and offering discounts, resulting in lower prices for some of its products. That took a toll on quarterly revenue, which came in lower than Wall Street estimates. P&G has also been hit by weak spending in China. Consumers there have been boycotting Japan-based products due to a controversial wastewater release, and that's hurt sales of P&G's pricey Japanese beauty brand SK-II. It's also seeing continuing boycotts of Western brands in the Middle East. But P&G did see a 1% rise in overall sales volumes. That was driven by growth in its grooming business, which includes Venus razors, and healthcare division featuring brands such as Metamucil. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ tumbled to close lower on Tuesday, weighed down by shares of chip and megacap companies ahead of big tech earnings this week. The Dow gained 0.5%, the S&P lost the same amount, and the NASDAQ shed about 1.3%. Shares of Microsoft, down less than 1% at the close, tumbled 6% in after-hours trading due to weaker-than-expected revenue growth in its Azure cloud business. That business is best positioned to benefit from AI. Chipmaker NVIDIA, poster child for the promise of AI growth, closed down 7%. Earnings from Apple, Amazon, and Meta platforms are also due this week. Among consumer staples, Procter & Gamble tumbled more than 4.5% after missing fourth-quarter sales expectations. Sarah Henry, managing director and portfolio manager at Logan Capital Management, said that despite trying to lower prices, P&G is among those companies that face an increasingly cost-conscious consumer.
Procter & Gamble really stood out here because they're a bellwether and they missed on organic growth. And what these companies are navigating is the transition from many, many rounds of pricing taken to overcome inflation over the last year. And they're trying to find levers for continued growth. And in some cases, consumers are kind of saying, I'm out.
Shares of Merck plunged more than 9.5% after the drug maker cut its annual profit forecast. CrowdStrike also dropped more than 9.5% after a report that Delta Airlines sought compensation from the cybersecurity firm and Microsoft for the carrier's global cyber outage earlier this month. And the small-cap Russell 2000 index gained modestly, extending a recent rotation out of more expensive stocks as the market has solidified expectations the Federal Reserve will begin cutting interest rates in September. Investors will look for further indications of Fed policy at the conclusion of the central bank's two-day policy meeting on Wednesday.
This is Vero, or Vacuum Cleaner Equipped Robot. It's a robot dog that uses AI to identify cigarette butts on the ground and suck them up with vacuum cleaner attachments on each foot. Vero's developers hope it's the solution to one of the world's most pressing environmental problems.
I thought, why not place the feet in a good way that while you're going, you're doing something useful. We can quite easily distinguish what are cigarette butts, for example, and that's just a start.
Dr. Claudio Cimini is part of the design team at the Italian Institute of Technology in Genoa.
The Vero robot is really born out of almost a frustration of seeing how people are just flicking away and just leaving the cigarette butts on the beach, in the small alleys. And these are places where machines can't access, like let's say the cleaning vehicles that can clean the roads very efficiently, and the squares on these little hard to access areas. There must be a different way, because if people need to pick them up by hand one by one, this is obviously not a solution.
Vero uses a camera system and an algorithm to recognize its targets and plan a route. The team says it's successfully collected approximately 90% of cigarette butts in diverse environments. But Cimini says it can also help in removing other objects and larger litter.
Later on, it can be bottle caps or small pieces of plastic. Whatever you can train the neural network to recognize can be then sucked up. They can make statistics of how much litter is there, in which area. And if it finds bigger objects like bottles and cartons of pizza and whatever we find here in Genoa on the beach in these months when it's nice weather, then it can mark that, and later on either a human team or a different robot team can go and collect also the bigger items.
Standard Chartered, or Stanchart, announced a record $1.5 billion share buyback on Tuesday. That's after the lender's pre-tax profits climbed a forecast-beating 5% to around $3.5 billion for the first half of the year. On these results, the London-headquartered bank, which earns most of its revenue in Asia, upgraded its income outlook for 2024. It now expects more than 7% growth in operating income. This bumper buyback, Stanchart's biggest ever, coming alongside the lifted guidance, emphasises the determination of CEO Bill Winters to boost the bank's shares. They have yet to match peers' gains this year. The bank said it will also press ahead with a cost-cutting plan that seeks to save around $1.5 billion in 3 years. This includes doing away with around 100 internal apps. Asia-focused global banks like Stanchart have benefited in recent years from higher interest rates, relatively stronger economic growth and wealth generation in the region. But in China, slowing growth and a property sector crisis have troubled Western banks, with signs of recovery being limited. Despite these mixed pressures, Stanchart shares rose in London trade following the lender's rosier results.
BP shares surged as much as 9% at the start of trade Tuesday, before settling back with gains of around 2%. The jump came after the oil giant beat forecasts and said it would raise its dividend. Second quarter profit came in at close to $2.8 billion. A weak performance on refining was offset by higher oil prices and strong retail sales. The result will ease pressure on new Chief Executive Murray Auchincloss after 2 straight quarters when earnings fell short of expectations. The Canadian took over in January and has vowed to revamp BP's operations. That includes focusing on the most profitable businesses, mostly in oil and gas. He's stepped away from some of the green commitments made by predecessor Bernard Looney, who had wanted a bigger emphasis on renewables. Instead, Auchincloss has approved development of a major new oil field in the US Gulf of Mexico. To cheer investors, BP lifted its dividend by 10% and pledged to stay the course on share buyback plans. The firm says it intends to buy a total of $14 billion worth this year and next.
Ellen DeGeneres amassed her $500 million net worth? From humble beginnings, Ellen's journey to becoming one of Hollywood's wealthiest celebrities is as diverse as it is impressive. Let's dive into how Ellen continues to rake in the big bucks. Even after her iconic talk show ended, Ellen didn't start with a silver spoon. She did various odd jobs growing up before breaking into stand-up comedy in the 80s and then starring in her 90s sitcom Ellen. Her career skyrocketed with The Ellen DeGeneres Show, making her a household name and boosting her net worth significantly. Even though the show ended, Ellen's business savvy ensures her wealth keeps growing. First up, EllenShop.com. Ellen's online store continues selling everything from Ellen-branded underwear to home games and crafts. This shop is a steady source of income, proving Ellen's appeal goes beyond the screen. Next, Kind Science. In 2021, Ellen launched her skincare line, Kind Science, focusing on age-positive, environmentally friendly products. Then there's ED by Ellen. This lifestyle brand, named after the nickname given by her wife, Portia de Rossi, features home decor, furniture, and more. Ellen's real estate ventures. Ellen and Portia have made millions flipping houses. They bought and sold over $102 million worth of homes. Endorsement deals. Despite controversies, Ellen retains lucrative deals with brands like Olay, American Express, and CoverGirl. These endorsements keep her bank account healthy and growing. Instagram influence. With over 130 million followers, Ellen makes about $52 million annually from sponsored posts. She's among the highest paid celebrities on the platform. The Ellen DeGeneres Show. Ellen made around $50 million annually from her talk show, taking home 60% of the advertising profits. This show was a major contributor to very good production. Ellen's production company continues to produce new projects, ensuring her continued success behind the scenes. Ellen's journey from stand-up comedian to multimillionaire is a masterclass in diversifying income, whether it's through her brands, investments, or digital presence.
کشورهای غربی را به درک واقعیت‌ها و ایجاد روابط مبتنی بر احترام متقابل و جایگاه برابر فرا می‌خوانیم و آماده‌ایم مدیریت تنش با دولت‌هایی که هنوز شأن و جایگاه ایران را درک نکرده‌اند گفتگو کنیم.